Section 8 of the Penny Magazine of the Society for the Diffusion of Useful Knowledge, Issue 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Penny Magazine of the Society for the Diffusion of Useful Knowledge, Issue 2 by Charles Knight. On the choice of a laboring man's dwelling. It seems, on the first view, somewhat odd to talk about choice of dwelling to a laboring man. It may occur to such a person that as he has seldom more than 2 or 3 shillings per week to allow for rent, he must be contented with the humble accommodations that can be afforded for that sum. This is, to a certain extent, true. But it is not, therefore, to be concluded that the exercise of a little prudence may not put him in possession of some advantages with his 2 or 3 shillings, which the want of that quality would exclude him from. There are some dwellings so badly situated, in such ill repair, and altogether so miserable, that a man exposes himself and his family to disease and every other inconvenience by inhabiting them. Such hovels are usually tenanted by people who are behindhand in paying their rent, and so cannot leave them, or who, being steeped to the very lips in poverty, are indifferent to cleanliness and all other comforts. It is possible that an industrious and careful family may, for some time, be obliged to live in a wretched house, but it is their own fault if they continue in it. In this country, the poor are better lodged than in any other in Europe, and within the last 20 years the increase of population and of productive labor has caused a demand for cottages, which has covered every parish, and particularly the neighborhood of large towns, with an amazing number of snug little houses in which provision is generally made for the comfort of those who inhabit them. And while there is such choice of dwellings, it is very much a laboring man's fault if he does not have a commodious one. And if he continue to be the tenant of a damp or ruinous or badly ventilated hut, while the snug brick and tiled tenement remains vacant, we should say that he is a blind and stupid observer of an old proverb, which, however, has much sense in it, that 3 removes are as bad as a fire. We wish to offer a few plain hints to assist our readers in the choice of a dwelling, and first of situation. Whoever rambles through our villages must often see a pretty little cottage that realizes all that benevolence could wish for a laboring man's dwelling. We have seen many such, and the remembrance often occurs to us when we observe rich men unhappy in large mansions and amongst splendid furniture. We then think of the contrast which the simplicity and content of the peasant's nest offers. Who has not looked upon the whitened walls, half covered with roses and jessamine, and the neat garden where ornament is blended with utility, and said, "If there's peace to be found in the world, a heart that is humble may hope for it here." But an agreeable dwelling is not always to be commanded, nor is the best situation always to be found. If a cottager have a house with a northern aspect, he must pay a little more attention to his gooseberry and apple trees, to make them bear as plentifully as those which are trained in a southern sun. We are only desirous to caution him against a house that is truly uncomfortable, and that cannot be easily rendered otherwise. We would first say, avoid, if it be possible, a low and marshy situation. There are many dangerous fevers which are produced by the vicinity of stagnant waters, and houses which from their site are constantly damp expose those who inhabit them to rheumatism, croup, ague, and other painful disorders. The same effects are produced by dwelling houses which are subject to occasional inundations of rivers. To be driven in cold weather from the accustomed fireside, to shiver in bedrooms which probably have no grate, to have 2 or 3 feet of water running through the lower part of the house, destroying many things and injuring more, and at last, when the inundations cease, to find the whole dwelling damp and miserable for several weeks. This is a visitation which no one would willingly seek. If a cottager has therefore the choice of being on a hillside or by the bank of a river, we think, if he were a sensible man, he would prefer the elevated situation. On the construction of a dwelling we have not much to observe. The great requisite is the free admission of light and air. Dark rooms are an inconvenience to the industrious housewife, which we need not describe, and rooms not properly ventilated are more injurious to health than may readily be conceived. Every sleeping room should have a chimney. In England no sitting room is, we apprehend, without one, but in Ireland the peasantry have neither window nor chimney to their wretched hovels. The smoke of the turf which burns upon their hearth forces its way out by the door, and the family sit and sleep in this dark and dirty condition. This would be intolerable amongst the more cleanly and richer peasantry of this country. Of the appendages to a house, a good supply of water is one of the most necessary conveniences. If the pitcher is to be carried a dozen times a day to a spring or a well a quarter of a mile off, it is almost the labor of one person to procure this supply, and that labor would contribute as much to the family earnings as, in 12 months, would dig a well. No cottager should be without a garden. A rood of land, properly cultivated, will half maintain a careful family. Of the fixtures of a house we cannot be expected to say much. A copper and an oven will enable the female to labor most profitably for the general good. A cottager that can grow his own potatoes, keep his pig, brew his beer, and bake his bread, has not many necessaries to purchase of the shopkeeper, and is therefore, to a certain extent, independent in the best sense of the word. As to furniture, we would say avoid furnished lodgings. The bed and table, and 2 or 3 chairs, of these places seldom cost more than £5, the interest of which is only 5 shillings a year. The money annually paid for the use of such things is almost as much as their prime cost. There is a satisfaction, too, in knowing that what is about us is our own. It is better to sit upon an old box or a block of wood than to pay enormously for the hire of a chair, and we may sleep as soundly upon a straw mattress as upon an expensive feather bed. One secret to be happy in every situation of life is this: not to sacrifice real comfort and solid independence to make a show. When the cottager has got £10 in the savings bank, he may afford his wife a mahogany tea table. An American writer has given some judicious remarks upon this subject, which apply to all classes. If you are about to furnish a house, do not spend all your money, be it much or little. Do not let the beauty of this thing and the cheapness of that tempt you to buy unnecessary articles. Dr. Franklin's maxim was a wise one: nothing is cheap that we do not want. Buy merely enough to get along with at first. It is only by experience that you can tell what will be the wants of your family. If you spend all your money, you will find you have purchased many things you do not want, and have no means left to get many things which you do want. If you have enough, and more than enough, to get everything suitable to your situation, do not think you must spend it all merely because you happen to have it. Begin humbly. As riches increase, it is easy and pleasant to increase in comforts, but it is always painful and inconvenient to decrease. After all, these things are viewed in their proper light by the truly judicious and respectable. Neatness, tastefulness, and good sense may be shown in the management of a small household, and the arrangement of a little furniture, as well as upon a larger scale, and these qualities are always praised and always treated with respect and attention. The consideration which many purchase by living beyond their income, and of course living upon others, is not worth the trouble it costs. The glare there is about this false and wicked parade is deceptive. It does not in fact procure a man valuable friends or extensive influence. However small may be a man's income, there is one very certain way of increasing it, that is, frugality. A frugal expenditure will enable almost everybody to save something, and as there are now established throughout this country banks where the industrious may safely deposit their savings, however little they may be, and receive the same sort of advantage which the rich derive from their money, that is, interest, there is every inducement to make an effort to save. Dr. Franklin observes, in his usual forcible way, that £6 a year is but a groat a day. For this little sum, which may be daily wasted, either in time or experience, unperceived, a man of credit may, on his own security, have the constant possession and use of £120. Many humble men in England have risen to wealth by such small beginnings, but many more continue to expend the groat a day unnecessarily and never cease to be poor. A certain pope, who had been raised from an obscure situation to the apostolic chair, was immediately waited upon by a deputation sent from a small district in which he had formerly officiated as cure. It seems that he had promised the inhabitants that he would do something for them if it should ever be in his power, and some of them now appeared before him to remind him of his promise, and also to request that he would fulfill it by granting them 2 harvests in every year. He acceded to their modest request on condition that they should go home immediately and so adjust the almanac of their own particular district as to make every year of their register consist of 24 calendar months. Sir George Staunton visited a man in India who had committed a murder, and in order not only to save his life, but what was of much more consequence, his caste, he submitted to the penalty imposed. This was that he should sleep for 7 years on a bedstead, without any mattress, the whole surface of which was studded with points of iron, resembling nails but not so sharp as to penetrate the flesh. Sir George saw him in the 5th year of his probation, and his skin was then like the hide of a rhinoceros, but more callous. At that time, however, he could sleep comfortably on his bed of thorns, and remarked that at the expiration of the term of his sentence he should most probably continue that system from choice which he had been obliged to adopt from necessity. Ending of Section 8. Read by Silas Fayler, September 2025. End of the Penny Magazine of the Society for the Diffusion of Useful Knowledge, Issue 2, by Charles Knight.